We're going to show you big wall anchors in this episode. If you can climb really fast and if you prepared really quickly, but you don't know how to build a organized and efficient anchor, you can really hose yourself because it's the foundation of how fast you're able to do changeovers. And a lot of the things that hosed me in the past were arriving to a clustered anchor or setting something up that had the heavy stuff on top of the other stuff, smashing it. So putting things on the anchor in order helps you take it off in order and helps the person who's climbing going to be on the correct side, but more importantly, the bag is going to be on the correct side because it doesn't lift itself. Jeremiah is going to show you his methods with a cordelette, and I'm going to show you my methods with a quad anchor so you can see two different ways of skinning the cat, though they both work. His method is a little bit more versatile, but it weighs a little bit more, and the quad anchor is lighter, and you can just decide for yourself which one works best for you. So if you go read the Big Wall Bible, you can potentially get dozens of people's way of accomplishing this thing in the most efficient manner, depending on the different contexts you will come across as you go up the big stones. Now this course is entirely free. I don't even ask for your email to go look at the Big Wall Bible or look at these videos. And so I thank the people who make that possible, which is the patrons who support this channel with $1 per episode. Literally being able to get this out to more people allows us to only need 1% of the audience donating $1 per episode to make this viable. If you can't afford or just don't want to, that's okay. That's the point of doing it this way. If you can click like on the videos and subscribe, that really helps us out and doesn't cost you anything. Now, I don't live on donations. 100% of that goes back into the channel, but I do have bills to pay, and Rocky Talkie helps me pay some of those bills. And I was using these Rocky Talkies before I ever got sponsored by them because I had so many epics when I used normal walkie-talkies that were unreliable. Now the people who design these are climbers themselves. They have a small but growing business, and they tried to make the best walkie-talkie possible that does not require a license. They're very reliable, they're lightweight, and the battery lasts a long time. And you can get 10% off if you go to rockytalkie.com/hownottoo. And this is a gear-intensive sport, so whatever you buy at extremegear.org supports us with 10%. And the proceeds go to the Cave Exploration Society, which are doing cave exploration projects around the world. So your money's going to great places. And of course, you can grab a beautiful I Love El Capitan shirt at hownottoswag.com. Now time for the anchors.
We're gonna talk about how to do a 2-bolt anchor here. Now I pretty much use the same system, whether it's a 2-bolt, 3-bolt, or even a gear anchor using a cordelette. One of the points that I wanna bring up here is the value of using big lockers versus using little lockers. Now little lockers are nice for connecting things as a carabiner, but I like working with big lockers anytime I'm working with an anchor because I have more to clip to. So start changing over to big lockers if you can. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get some lockers on my anchor. So I'm gonna take one free locker, I'm gonna tip and flip it upside down, so then I can always screw down so I don't screw up. The next thing I'm gonna do here is I have my locker that's on my cordelette. I'm going to take that locker off and I'm gonna connect that to my anchor as well. I'm gonna take my cordelette and I will show you how I re-rack this back up, but I start from the middle and I let it drop. I take this and I clip it into my locker, but I don't tie any knots. I'm gonna keep it unlocked for a second, and then I'm gonna come back up, measuring roughly around my chest level, visualizing how much rope I'm gonna need for my knot. Then I'm gonna tie a clove onto the other locker. And I can start right here with my first anchor. I'm gonna do a BHK using a super figure of 8. And I'm gonna be focusing on the direction of pull. Let's see, is that gonna be enough material? Let's see.
If it's not, that's a good example.
I'll leave that open for right now. So there's my BHK. If I have my jugger coming up in this direction, I would make sure that my direction of pull matches up with that force. But notice that I don't have a ton of material here, so I want to make sure that there's enough for him to be able to clip into or utilize these loops. This is a little bit too tight. So the reason why I like to use a clove here is it's easy to make those adjustments without me having to totally untie the entire anchor. So I'm just going to disassemble this again really quick. So I noticed I needed more material than what I had. So the reason for that clove again is I can just feed in without having to open any extra lockers or any adjustments. So there's that. So again, I can do it my BHK if I need to with a super figure of 8. There we go. And now I can lock it down. So right off of this, I already have everything set up I need for my hauling system and my lines fixed section, because there's 2 strands that I could end up hauling off of or docking my bag off of and having them jug off of that line too. There's that option. Now, if I like to have a little bit more space, I can create a whole separate anchor by using the rest of this cordelette. By, again, you guessed it, another clove, but I bring it to the right locker. There we go, let's pull there. And again, I might be looking for my direction of pull and tying a figure of 8 or super 8, whatever you like to do with the material you need. So again, now if you look at this anchor, there is a lot of clip-in spots. I have this master point, I have this master point, I have this master point, there's this shelf up here, there's this shelf up here.
What's a shelf?
A shelf is just a extra spot that you can go indirect on, you could haul off of. It is a fully supported redundant location on the knot. Clipping these 2 strands is not a shelf. Clipping in between just one loop is not a shelf. A shelf is always a redundant piece that it connects between your anchor, so one side in between and one side in between. And that is fully life supporting. But the reason I like this one is there's a lot of clip-in spots, a lot of attachment points to it. The downside to the way that I do this anchor is sometimes if I was to dock my bag on this loop down here, is they cannot start cleaning this anchor until this haul bag is unweighted and gone, because you can't clean an anchor that's being weighted. So that is a downside to this anchor, but I really value over beefing stuff, and it's very, very similar. You'll see in my 3-point anchor system that I do the same. Did I need this extra master point though? No. That is all you technically need right there. Why are you laughing there, Ryan?
Man, if only you could see how much we are disagreeing on the camera before we even start. He said he doesn't think there's any value to a small locker, and I don't think you need more than 2 big lockers on the entire big ol' rack. Well, that just shows you can skin a cat more than one way, and it's kind of nice to show you 2 different ways. My goal is to be able to show you 100 different ways. And if you give us your feedback of how you do an anchor system or any specific thing, we can add it to the Big Wall Bible. So this is a big, I'll step on it here, this is a 240 centimeter Dyneema sling. And if you make it into a loop, it'll still be out of frame. And if you tie an overhand knot on one side of it, with the sewn part not in the knot, so that's just poor form, and then I'll do the same on this side, and this is what's known as a quad anchor. Now typically you kind of have to have your bolts in a certain range for this to work, and I'll explain all the components of this because I already have it tied all the time, and that is what you see right here. Now that I'm done installing this, I will lock those, and I have my big HMS or pear-shaped carabiners here, and we have a whole quad video about this where we broke test this and showed that if you clip the shelf, which all you have to do is clip these 2 strands, and it sits on top of that knot.
A little bit anticlimactic.
13.1 kilonewtons. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 super bomber things that I can clip to. This is just a simple anchor. I think those are all my thoughts. Let me rebuttal some of the things that Jeremiah said. He likes to use 7mm cordelette. His rope is more abrasion resistant than this material. Dyneema is more slippery, so it's harder to actually abrade. So it's all basically super good enough. As far as strength goes, if you do use a carabiner like this up here, and you put it in this way, you are putting all the force on the gate side of the carabiner. Not a big deal. It does break, maybe 50% lower based on some studies. I actually have tried to recreate the failure point being a lot lower on a pear shape. I have yet to be able to do it, but you want to be able to understand that your carabiners are stronger on the spine, and so just be aware of that. But if you're clipping and cloving, it's nice to have the gate on the outside because you want to be able to just take your rope and clip it in.
I just don't pay attention to it because it really, to me, doesn't matter.
Either way, it works for you.
It's super good enough. I just clip it to the thing.
So if you're doing anything in the realm of what Jeremiah is doing or what I'm doing, you're talking about 40 plus kilonewtons. Don't worry about strength. Make sure, as a highliner, we're more worried about abrasion than literally anything else, because if a tight piece of webbing is being rubbed on the rock, it's going to snap. Same with this. Be mindful that this bolt's not back and, you know, it's not doing this. That would be a problem. But if you think about the forces you're applying to this, someone jugging is maybe a kilonewton, give or take half a kilonewton. And hauling is just, your bag doesn't hopefully weigh more than a kilonewton. That's over 200 pounds. And I am under kilonewton. So let's say if you are one and the bag is one, that's only 2 plus friction. So no more than 3. You're just not getting crazy forces, and the bolts are super good enough on any routes you're climbing on El Capitan. And if they're not, you're gonna know it. So you will have to either back it up by starting the next pitch and extending down that gear. But don't be afraid of the bolts, and don't be afraid of clipping the metal to the metal. You just don't want a long chain of carabiners, because if something gets twisted, it'll pop off. Whenever I fix, I do have 2 carabiners here. I make sure I match the same size. Otherwise, it's just not, it's totally fine. If this is all you got, clip me in that way. But I'd prefer to have this carabiner down here. As far as versatility goes, I don't need more versatility in most cases, because I will make 2 points. This is a master point. These are points. And if something's here and there and there and there, I will take all the giant wad of slings, and I'm going to equalize and make 2 points that I can build an anchor off of. You don't ever want a bolt out here and you have this wide obtuse angle. We don't have to be an engineer to know this is going to add more force to this bolt than the force you're putting on it because of the angle. Just know that you want the angle to be more acute. And I can't think of a pun. You just want the angle more acute. And most bolts are already pre-installed. Most things you're doing on El Capitan or the trade routes you're doing are going to be about this far apart. More oftentimes than not, I'll have the 2 good bolts when I get up there, but sometimes the old bolts that they've replaced, they might have left, and you might have a 3rd bolt to work with. And it might still be super good enough. Rust doesn't mean it's dangerous. It just, I think it looks really bad. Not all rust is bad. Sometimes it's just surface rust. If you're in tonsai and it's rusty, it's probably going to snap off under body weight. But on El Cap,
Why is that?
because of SCC, or the stress crack corrosion, it's called how not to chemistry. Between the salt, the limestone, all the stuff, it'll eat metal. El Capitan doesn't eat metal. The problem is the old bolts were a lot smaller. If you see a 3/8 bolt and it's got a little rust on it, you're fine. Don't worry about it. The last guy didn't pull it out. It's all you got to trust. If you can back things up, great. I find a clean, simple anchor helps a lot with changeovers and staying organized. Now, what happens if you have all this gear on you, we'll cover in a little bit, when you want to take it off and dump it on here. There's a way to do it and a way not to do it to not cluster this up. But let's have Jeremiah show you a 3-bolt anchor.
So I'm going to just show how I do reassemble my cordelette. Is I always start with the 2 ends, and then I give myself tiny little T-Rex arms, but then it's really just reflaking the rope back over your head, just like we do, but it's little arms, not big arms. And then once I leave, I don't know, about like 3 feet below me, 2 feet below me, take it off my head. I take this and I fold it back in half again, and then I wrap it around. So then the middle is always able to peek through that little hole there. So that's how I pack my cordelette up. So then every single time that I need to deploy it, like for this beautiful 3-point anchor that I'm about to make, I go ahead and take my locker and clip it to the bolt, drop it. It always comes untangled very nicely. That goes there. Take another locker. This time I'm going to clove. Again, assessing to how much distance I'm going to need. That's good enough for me. And then I'm going to lock that guy down. And then my next locker. Again, going to measure my distance that I need. Tie a clove. Lock it down. And then the right side is for one thing, the left side is for another thing. I can decide which way is my jugger going to be coming up and which side does my haul bag need to be on. So if my haul bag needs to be on the right side because I see that the route is going to go off to the right this next time. But it's also, that can sometimes be very misleading because it's not necessarily which way is the route starting, but you should be thinking about where does the next pitch end at. Because you might be starting in this direction, but ultimately the haul line ends up needing to be way off to the left. And ultimately when you bring that haul bag up, the haul bag truly had to actually be on the left because it ends on the left. Does not just go to the right because it starts going to the right. Very important to always keep in mind, where does the haul bag need to go when you need to lower it out later. It's an important point. So let's just say that I am going to be docking my bag on the right side. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, if I have plenty of material, it doesn't hurt, doesn't take more time for me to do my super figure of 8. And while I have 4 clip-in spots, 3 clip-in spots, 1, 2, 3. And then wherever my jugger is going to be coming from, if they come in the same direction to pull that way. If they're coming from another direction, then I might be orienting it in the other direction. Now, those that are watching this, yes, I am fully aware that this beaner is taking 2 different poles of direction there as this thing is getting weighted with a haul line or whatever, and this one is getting pulled in the jugging direction. This is something that I am okay with because there's no perfect system. It's something that I'm going to allow for that direction. Now, if it's both in this direction, this is fine, even though I understand that this strand is not taking the load, this is taking most of it. Again, every system has downfalls. This is super good enough in my case.
It's taking, technically, if they're both pulling, is taking the load from this one.
True, yeah. So to me, it's still very redundant. You know, it's a super incorporated anchor. In a big wall, you do not need a equalized anchor. I don't want to say that.
You don't. None of your anchors have been equalized. They've all been shit for that. I'm paying attention.
All of my anchors still try to focus in a sense of equalization, but I don't focus that equalization is the most important aspect of my anchor.
You're in the family of it pulling on more than one thing.
I care more about redundancy than equalization. I don't make it the most important thing, but it is still in my important list. Safety third.
It's on the list. Safety's third, equalization's fourth.
I have a lot of spots that I can end up clipping to, but again, in this scenario, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 places that I can connect stuff to, including haul bags, my partner, as well as gear, or even base camp.
Let me show you how I do my 3-point anchor. As you can see, I still have a quad, but I took these 2 bunny ears and spread them out to the other bolt. Now, before I clip this to this 3rd bolt, I put on a poor man's rigging plate. It is a pear-shaped carabiner. Because what I want to do is I want to clip my protraction, in this case, to my right side, because I want to dock on my right side, because the bag's going to go to the right side. Let me give you an example of why this is so important. I need to emphasize this. I don't care how long this makes this video. If the bag is here and you're not hauling straight up, and you're going to be hauling 45 degrees that way, and it's too heavy for me to lift as the follower, and you start going, and I need to, and it's coming up here, and it's going across my ropes, my everything, I can't lift it high enough, and the leader can't haul it up enough to get it off the anchor. This is where the releasable system, the Muncher Mule overhand, or even the adjustable daisies that you have come into play. But if it's on this side of you, it's gonna wanna just swing through your system, and you're gonna try to be like thinking small to get this thing around you. It has hosed us for hours before, and it was awful. So if the bag goes right, put the bag on the right side. If I do clip my protraction up here, it's gonna be sideways against the wall, and I wanna be able to pull outward, and I don't wanna twist on this. So either I fix that through a variety of solutions, or I clip this now second carabiner, and I'm able to haul, and I'll put my hand here, and I'll grab my Rocky, because it's so bomber, and I'm going to push and push and push, and that is the hauling video. But you can see that my protraction's as high as I can get it, because I want to dock my bag as high as I can, because I like to sit on it and get into it. If it's too low, it's hard to grab some stuff if you need it. If you move as fast as Jeremiah does, you don't have time to sit on the bag. So let's evaluate this based on a traditional climbing analysis of this. Is it Serena? Is it strong? Yeah, we've tested this. Is it redundant? Hell yeah. We're in all 3 points, and everything you're clipping to is gonna be connected in some way or another. Now this shelf I would clip 2 strands. This shelf I would clip 2 strands. This is not redundant. I mean, if you're clipping a rope bag to it, whatevs. R, S-E-R, equalized. Did I skip equalized?
Yeah.
Oh, I skipped equalized because it's last on my list when I'm big walling. This, ironically, does a pretty good job. This is why quad anchors shine, is because you get a little bit of play here. But once you add that 3rd bolt in there, I'm still equalized on 2. 1's strong enough to hold you. You just want it backed up. No extension, which means if this were to blow, it's limiting how far down it goes. Now, if you see our shock loading is a myth video, you'll see that this is only bad-ish if you're connected directly to the anchor. But if you're jugging and have 100 feet of rope between you and this, the rope's going to absorb some of that fall. But it's still good practice, and it gives you a shelf to have no extension. What other myth is there out there that's not that important? Serena?
And then angles.
Angles, yeah. See that video.
Get to plug every one of your videos.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Yeah, Serena is important to aim for. Who cares if you're using bolts? The caveat, right? We'll get into if you're using some sketchy ass cams. If you're using sketchy ass cams, you're climbing A5 and probably good enough to be able to evaluate that yourself. And remember, like we talked before, you want to keep your angles less than 90 degrees if you want your bolts to never see more of the load than you are putting on it. But I'm a slackliner, and you turn death triangles into a sport. So just be mindful of how forces interact with this. And so what you should do is go watch 200 videos on this channel to understand how carabiners break, protractions break, and quads break, and the list goes on. You can go to the content page of our website and filter out exactly what you want to see, or who you want to see, or where you want to see it, and it'll show you the episodes so you don't have to go through some wonky playlist. Now let me show you how I build a natural anchor where I have to place my own pro, or supplement a 1-bolt anchor because there's a big bomber crack next to it. I like to have every point be 2 things. And then sometimes I have 3 points. Sometimes that means 6 things, either cams, rivets, pitons, whatever. So in this one, I have a rivet hanger and a number 1 cam, and I've equalized them. And I'm demonstrating this with 2 shoulder length slings because I had plenty on me, and my partner doesn't need that many to do the next pitch, and we're gonna bivvy here tonight. So in this case, I like to just have this super beefy equalizing wad of slings. But on this side, this is more realistic, where I'm going to just have a single sling in a sliding X. I do like sliding X's more than a BFK or a big fat knot, because this way, these 2 pieces are going to share the load. And I want every point to be truly, truly, truly equalized. This is when equalization matters to me. Once I get past this point, then I'm still pretty equalized, actually. And this is called, in this slackline world now, cascading anchors, where you go from an equalized sliding X to an equalized sliding X, which is kind of what the quad is. And this is the best way to keep an equal force on all the pieces. Now, if you are running out of slings but have an abundance of cams for some reason, you can manually equalize, and you'd, let's say, put this guy in first, and then you would put this guy in. And you want to be able to, clip to something that's bomber, but you can just push this guy higher until it's kind of holding some of the force and some are holding the force. So if a cam slips, it's going to slip just a little, and now it's holding more from here and it's taking a lot more load off. It's a lot harder to pull 2 cams out than it is 1, not always required. This in a solid crack is bomber. It's going to be 8 kilonewtons at the minimum if it's in a good crack. But sometimes if you're trying to haul a massive load, not that I do 3-to-1s, but let's say you're doing that and you got 3 people jugging and you have a shit show. Yes, that's happened with me. You really do want to have some really strong points. We have blown an old piton before and snapped the head off at an anchor. And luckily, we were redundant and we didn't have too much of a shock load on the other stuff. Now, you're going to be climbing a route, right? That means there's going to be something someone's going to be clipping to, unless you have 30 feet of hooking to do after this. You can go vertically and get the next bolt, get the next pieces in, whatever, and then double length sling extend it, or use Jeremiah's 7mm cordelette, might be nice for that. So you don't always have to think horizontally with an anchor. You can go pretty vertical in your scenario, which will cover how to put a portaledge on something like this, because you don't want to put your portaledge right here, and then you can't get access to your bag and stuff. So we'll cover that in a little bit. Jeremiah's going to show you his all-natural anchor.
So one thing I do want to emphasize before I get to talk is every anchor you arrive at is always very different, and you cannot just use my system of how I do things, and you cannot just use Ryan's, because everything you have to adapt to and manipulate. So this is one of them of how I would still use my same 1 cord to attach the same process. One little point you'll notice that's different about mine is that even as it's getting loaded, that master point is a little bit higher up. So if you are trying to attach things, you don't have to have a master point that's way so much lower. This allows you to still be able to get the same use and same pieces. And what it actually leaves me with is a lot of leftover cord to still be able to do stuff with, which I'll show that here in a sec of using those leftover cord. But what I have here in simplicity is I have, starting on one end of my rope, is actually a bunny ears 8 equalized, so one piece is going up to my piton and one loop is going to my rivet hanger. On the other strand is another bunny ears 8 somewhere in the middle of the rope if I want. And then that goes to my cam and goes to my other rivet hanger. So again, equalized to whatever length I need. And then those two come to a master point. That's also another bunny ears 8. So if one strand was to still break, I still have my other one and I have redundancy in my master point. Now this is a little master point. I definitely would make this a little bit bigger, but it's just a point to show that you can still tie it. I would just need to adjust my system. Now what I can do, and this is not what I would always do, is still have a second point to be able to go for docking my haul bag if I want, let's say. I would not want to attach my haul bag up to a rivet hanger. I would not want to dock my haul bag to just a piton, right? In this case, I like to actually have kind of a lower haul bag docking station because it's just spreading load against all of my really bad pro. So with that, I just kept running the line back up to a clove into the shelf. The reason why I went to the shelf and not the rivet hanger is, again, it can spread the load between both of these pieces and not just an individual piece. Now, if I wanted to, let's say, extend this anchor over for more clipping spots for a base camp or living on the wall for the night, is I can take the rest of my cord that I have and run the cord way over to another point that's way low. And now I have plenty of material and I can put things onto this, I can clip it to this if it's just like things like my bags. Not a fixed rope, not a haul line, anything like that. It would just be like my food bag. There are a couple issues wrong with this point, is that this angle is well over 90 degrees. At 90 is nearly a 1-to-1 force. This is gonna make the force over here much higher. Plus, there's no redundancy within this. This is really just for an example that you can attach extra little things to.
Your rack. It's meant for your rack.
Correct. Yeah. Now, if I wanted to, what this also still allows for me to be able to do with this much material is, so right now I have my main master point here too with my 4 pieces. Now, if I realize that I do have another piece of Pro that I could get up really high, I could go get that other piece of Pro and incorporate this into the anchor since I have plenty of material. So I'm gonna go do that, especially since one of my cams just fell out of the wall.
I was so gonna make a joke about that. What knot are you doing?
I'm doing a clove hitch there. I love cloves. I think cloves are just king. I understand that they're not a knot,
I
but
didn't need you to explain why. It's okay. I just wanted to know.
Troll Patrol.
You're so defensive, and all I wanted to know what it was.
All right, there's another master point. So now you can kind of see even that. And what that also allows for me, I understand that when this gets weighted, that it does shift the weight, but it just does add an extra bit of security that even if all of these failed, I mean, it's still incorporated into this system as well. And again, still with all of this, look at that. Another clove there.
You look like you've tied a clove before.
Just a couple times. And in this system, I mean, it's one piece of rope. Yeah, there's a lot of lockers and carabiners in this, but I mean, it's one piece of rope that does incorporate a lot of use, which I like. Especially when I'm on my portal edge camps at night, I like to be able to have a piece of string kind of run across everything and interconnected, and I'm not having to use a carabiner and a sling for this and a carabiner and a sling for this to disassemble later on, because I might have needed it to fix the next pitch for the next morning anyways. So a lot of it's just problem solving and adapting to whatever scenario you have. I have used slings many, many times and then also used my cord to get to those pieces. So just some complexity to overthink that a lot of these anchors aren't just straightforward all the time. You do have to use some problem solving and thinking through them. There's 2 phrases that a lot of people use is serene, but there's also another one I want to mention which is called earnest. And earnest ends with a T. What the T means is timely. So in this case, this might not fall under that category of timely because I did have to spend some extra time readjusting and equalizing and all that stuff. But ultimately, you want to be able to get your anchors down to be built very, very quickly. It should not be taking you a half hour to create a safe and redundant anchor. You want to be able to get that thing made and everything fixed within under 5 minutes. If you arrive to a nice clean 2-bolt or even a 3-bolt anchor, that should be able to be done in under a minute. You should be able to just go. It does not matter if you have a quad or a quarterlet, you should be able to make an anchor immediately. Trad anchors and all this extra stuff does take some complexity, but even still I think this still took me, what would you say, maybe 7 minutes with equalizing things?
It's more important to get the pieces right.
Yeah.
It's important to take your time where it matters, not because you're incompetent because you didn't practice at home.
Exactly.
If you have it all ready to go, at least with my setup, is I would flip it like this. Boom. Clove, fix, bite, butterfly, whatever you fix him with, maybe a little slack for me, clove up here. Done. This should not take a long time. If you over-engineer this thing, it can suck. But what's cool is I have a daisy that is going to allow me to clip here, and I could come all the way over here to this lovely bolt if this is, some anchors have that. And if you use the daisy chain, you can now clip, let's say I don't want to carry this anymore, and to emphasize, he did not convert me. This was the easiest way to put gear on.
Oh wait, it was the easiest to put gear on to change over.
Yep. But I climb in blocks, so I don't need to change over very often. And if I want to take off my Rocky Talkie and keep it handy, it's right there. That was sweet. Oh shoot, they're both up here. How are you communicating with me? If you want to set up a portal edge for the night, and this is a hanging belay, You can't have your bag, your portaledge, your gear, and all your stuff in the exact same place. You have to pick if it's gonna be below or above or whatever. So I'm gonna show you my favorite way, if I don't have a way to go horizontal, is to go vertical. We're gonna finish this episode off by me showing you the portaledge connected to an anchor that's really high. This is what I call a vertical scenario if I don't have the option of a horizontal scenario. And I almost prefer this anyways because how easy it is to get into the haul bag, which I'll show you in a second. There's a lot of components not here, like my rack or a partner and the sleeping bags and everything. But as I pull everything out of the haul bag, everything has a carabiner. So when I hand it down to my partner, they can clip it to all these different clip-in points we're gonna have or to the edge of the portaledge. You'll notice I have one aider clipped to my partner's aider, which is clipped to the quad anchor up there. And I want these spread out left and right as much as possible. That makes sense. So I can climb this. This is how I go up and down easily. That is how I go up and down. That is not how I stay safe, obviously. So I'm on a gree-gree if I'm gonna be moving around a bunch. And you know, that's what you do with those. But this allows me to move up and down safely. And then if I want to just, when I get up there, stay up there, I have my personal anchor. I've already taken all my gear off because I don't want to sleep with my gear on, and we've already racked it somewhere else in this imaginary scenario. So I want something out of the haul bag. I don't usually go up very often because I pull everything out, hand it to my partner, and they clip it here underneath this haul bag to this daisy or to the corners of the portaledge. I'm gonna go up and I'll stay on that guy, nice and snug. And I kind of want to just hang out here for a second and talk about another point. If you are going to bring a fly and think you might use it, you install it when you install the portaledge. When I open all this up, I can just drape it over. And you can see it says cliffside, and you see it says cliffside because this is shaped to go a specific way.
Did you write that, or did that come with the fly?
With that handwriting, that was definitely something I wrote.
So is that something you would add to your prepping list?
Yes, I guess we'll have to redo that whole video.
Just kidding.
There's actually gonna be a lot of tips, even in this scenario, that I can't cover and keep this video under 10 hours. So make sure you go to the Big Well Bible. Anyways, you can see that my master point, extended master point, is almost at the base of this bag. Sometimes, if Brent's wall would allow it, I would probably have the master point about right here. And I used my other quad anchor in order to extend my true quad anchor up there. You can see how much of an angle the portaledge has with all of the slings. And typically I don't want them that tight at an angle, but we don't have the height here. But you can't fan this out without hitting your portaledge. And if you have a 2-bolt anchor and you have no way of going horizontal, you can't have your bag and your portaledge right next to each other. So if you put your bag below your portaledge, it's going to be very hard to reach in and get stuff. Now in order to get into my haul bag, I'm gonna climb a little higher. Right there. And I want to be about the height of the portaledge, or the haul bag, directly to a bolt. There we go. And I'm backed up on my rope. It's very important to ask yourself, how am I clipped in right now? I'm not just on one personal anchor, I'm attached to the actual climbing rope that's fixed to the anchor itself. Now, I'm gonna hand this down to Jeremiah. Let's pretend he's there. And I'm gonna hand the next thing down to him. And everything I hand to him is gonna have a carabiner. If I have a jug of water that doesn't have a dedicated carabiner, he's gonna have some spare biners handy. So everything I clip to him is going to be attached to something. Could even also be attached to the end of the ladders, as long as you don't put too many things, because as you climb back up and down, you can, if it's a food bag, you spill your food. Notice I'm not getting all the way in. This is actually very comfortable for me, and I can get all the way to the bottom. Another use for the docking cord could be connecting stuff. Okay, and this would have the hole in the corner for him to clip to, as soon as I hand it to him. I'm going to come back down to him. Checking, checking, checking. And there's almost no reason for me to come back up here. It's not very heavy. Most of the stuff is with us. We can clip stuff, especially if the portaledge is lower, up here, and even here, and here, and here, like food bags. And it doesn't hit us in the head at night when we're trying to sleep. And if you haven't seen our Living on the Wall yet, here's a little sneak peek to that episode, is you have to be careful where you step on a portaledge. If you step on that side, these straps keep you from going down. If you step on this side, there's nothing from keeping these straps from going up. So if I step on the outside, trying to, there's some rocks there. It basically does this. And your partner falls out of bed and you lose a friend. If they survive, they're not gonna wanna be your friend. That's how you lose a friend. So understand how your portaledge works by doing what? Practicing, which is what you should be doing with everything you're watching in this video and all the others. Go to the Big Wall Bible in order to learn more.